Hi there. I don't think it's a case of the Trump campaign flagging, more that the Harris campaign has sort of picked up where the Biden administration was and has managed to energize groups of people who were perhaps less thrilled by the choice of Joe Biden. So we're seeing more enthusiasm. We're seeing that reflecting in the public opinion polls at the moment. But I think it's more a comment on the momentum at the moment behind the Democrats than it is sort of a comment on the Republicans falling behind in any way. That said, they don't seem to have quite managed to work out yet how to take on this new pairing. And they're going to have to do that fairly quickly if they want to sort of have an impact on this momentum.
Well, this week, billionaire Elon Musk hosted Donald Trump in a live chat on X, which, mind you, was plagued with glitches. But do you think his appearance and links with Elon Musk have brought good or bad publicity for the Trump campaign?
I don't think either. I mean, in a sense, if you listen to that interview, Trump's not saying anything new. There's no particular specifics in terms of policy. He's touching on all of the issues that he'd been touching on before. So he's speaking to his base. I think it's not going to have convinced anybody who might be on the fence in terms of voting. But of course, what having Elon Musk on side does is give Donald Trump access to the platform and just the number of followers that Elon Musk has, as well as on Twitter. I mean, it's not that long ago, remember, that Trump had been banned from Twitter. So there's an about face there. But at the moment, he's very much keeping himself within his own base rather than trying to appeal to the moderate voters in the centre that he's going to need to win to be successful in the November election.
Meanwhile, another tech giant, Google, says it's detected efforts by Iranian hackers to target both campaigns. What's been revealed and how significant is this?
I mean, if it's discovered to be true, then I think it's going to be fairly significant. I think it's being investigated at the moment. We don't have confirmation one way or the other. I mean, we do know from previous elections that there have been attempts by hackers in other countries to sort of shape and influence the election. That's not specific to the United States either. We've seen that elsewhere. But it does raise questions for both campaigns, actually, about how to protect their message and their details, as well as the information that's getting out to voters.
Speaking of messages, Kamala Harris has been the presumptive Democratic nominee for US President for less than a fortnight. What are some of the key issues that she has campaigned on so far?
So there are a few key issues. I mean, in a way, at the moment, she's trying to sort of get herself out there, and both with herself and the announcement of Tim Walz as her VP candidate. That it's sort of setting the tone at the moment of the campaign. So she hasn't given any detailed interviews about policies or anything along those lines. She's been talking about reproductive freedoms a lot. She was sort of the head of the Biden administration talking around issues of abortion and reproductive rights. So we've seen her talk about that. We've seen her talk a lot about her own experience of prosecuting criminals. So obviously she's trying to paint Donald Trump in that light as a convicted felon and as somebody who can't be trusted as president to be back in office. So we're seeing those issues particularly, but I think once we get past the convention next week, the campaign is going to have to shift into a new gear, and it's going to have to start giving details about its policies and what they plan to do. So I think we'll see that coming fairly shortly.
Up until this point, though, has Kamala Harris been gaining in some polling? Where is she being received the strongest? What has the reaction been from the public?
There seems to have been quite a bump in the polls for Harris. It's difficult to know how long that will sustain. We're still quite a way out from the election, but certainly there's a sort of honeymoon period at the moment. And polls seem to suggest that things are about level, whereas Biden was consistently polling 2 or 3 points behind Donald Trump. Harris is now shown as level, or possibly even just in the lead in some of the key swing states. So places like Wisconsin and Arizona and Pennsylvania, those key swing states that we've been focusing on so much. Again, whether that will last has yet to be seen. But it's certainly a much more comfortable place for the Democrats to be right now than they were 3 weeks ago, when the discussion was all about whether Joe Biden was fit enough to continue for another 4 years.
How quickly things change. How have Americans reacted to Tim Walsh and JD Vance as picks for VP running mates? How have they been performing since they've hit the campaign trail?
Tim Walsh, I think, was a little bit of an outsider choice. He was on lists for people, but he wasn't particularly well known outside of the Midwest. So I think there's been an interest in him. Obviously, he was the one who started talking about the Republican ticket as being weird, and that seems to have caught on. So that's sort of given some momentum to the campaign. We're beginning to see Republicans challenge him on his handling of the riots in Minnesota in 2020. I suspect we'll see that come out. And we're waiting again to see sort of a detailed interview with him. But I think there's been curiosity. In terms of JD Vance, he seems very much to have been brought on to sort of reinforce the Trump base. He's alienating in many ways those moderate voters with some of the comments that he's made, or doubled down on old comments. But he has seemed to sort of energize in many ways the core Trump voters. So we'll see if that continues, whether he moderates the language or whether he continues on.
Well, as you mentioned, the Democratic National Convention takes place next week. What can we expect?
I think we'll see a lot of sort of pomp and ceremony around this. We'll see the Democrats sort of presenting a united front, as they have, by kind of converging around Harris after Biden stepped down. In some ways, a little bit like the Republican convention. This is the coronation of their presidential nominee. They're going to try and show unity. I think they're going to try and pick up on this positive message that the campaign has been trying to put out so much, that this is sort of an opportunity for, Americans to look to a brighter future, to sort of rescue the US from the doldrums that it's been in for a little while. So I think what we're likely to see is that sort of positive message. A lot of joy seems to be a big part of the campaign, and everybody sort of converging around Harris Walsh as their candidates, ready to start them off in sort of the main general election part, where they'll really start to take on Trump and the Republicans.
A big week for them. Meanwhile, what are some of the other key dates for both parties as they raise their campaign levels up several notches in these final few months? What can we expect? More debates as they've planned?
Yes, we know that there's definitely one debate happening. We may see others come along, possibly depending on how they go. They're both going to be campaigning and fundraising. This is going to get very expensive in terms of TV time, radio time, ads in media and so on. We're also going to see them traveling a lot, so expect a lot of sort of stump speeches, especially in those swing states that everybody seems to think are going to be the difference between winning and losing this time. I think also from the Democrats, what we're going to have to see if they want a chance of winning is more detail. So the beginning of speeches, maybe interviews where Harris and Walsh talk about exactly what their policies are and what they plan to do.
Well, Dr. Emma Long, it's going to be a fascinating few months ahead. We hope to check back in with you closer to the election. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.